Please be seated. Proceedings are resumed. I'll invite the honorable member from Easton to continue with his debate.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, I hear my so-called friend, the Premier, the Premier, out there saying that it's a wind-up. Madam Speaker, I do admit that on the break we had some discussions, and I have a much better understanding, not that I didn't before, but from their perspective. And the Attorney General came over and assisted me, but he confused a little bit now too, and he further confused me. But be that as it may, Madam Speaker, one thing I did get out of the Premier is that those Madam Speaker, one thing I did get out of the Premier is that he has admitted that some of those rehabilitation periods, that length of time in this under the schedule is somewhat onerous and lengthy, and maybe we need to look at them. For instance, the probationary period and the curfew period, the rehabilitation period. And Madam Speaker, too, I think those juvenile ones with the 2.5 years, and I think there's one here for 5 years and stuff like that. Madam Speaker, I've seen many a juvenile in this country that could that made it when they started turning into adult life, and that stigma, they clean themselves up, so to speak. And I believe those are the opportunities we need to start giving our younger people. I know there are many Caymanian young kids, Madam Speaker. The Deputy Governor can tell you, I wrote him a letter recently that we can be proud of. And Madam Speaker, I want to say that 99% of our kids we can be proud of. There's that 1% that we need to lift. We need to pull them up by the back of their shirt and keep their heads up from going under the water. And some of them are going to pull out of our hands and swim on their own, and there's not much we can do about that. But the fundamental thing is that the Premier has said that some of those may be a requirement. He said maybe, we'll see. And he will never convince me that Section 10 is not to clean up the record of people who were deported. And Madam Speaker, on the break also the Deputy Governor said that it was 10 was subject to complying with the immigration law. I don't see that in here. Section 10 of the law. That's for 9.2. That has nothing to do with 10. That's for the purposes of the such law as from time to time. Why don't we just put the immigration law? if that's what you want to do, because it appears like the government is saying you still have to apply. The intent is that you have to apply to the governor and cabinet to be recognized. But Madam Speaker, I don't support that. I support, like I told Stuart Jack, smooth sailing with Hurricane Ivan winds upon your back. Don't come back. Keep going. And may the oceans extend itself much further than they are, that we know, with deep water. Madam Speaker, I
Member
believe.
from Eastern, if he kept going, he would come back to where he started.
No, 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 no. Madam Speaker, you wouldn't wait till the end of it. I hope for them that the world is flat. At least their world.
Or just put 10 degrees. Or put 10 degrees on the compass rudder and he can't come back to where he started.
Madam Speaker, I shall await to hear what the great good Deputy Governor and the Attorney General and the Premier response on those particular ones and the rehabilitation periods.
I recognize the Honorable Deputy Governor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to contribute to the debate on the Criminal Record Spent Convictions Bill. Madam Speaker, the Premier in his opening did say that this matter has been around for quite some time. I remember dealing with it when I was the chief officer in what is now the Ministry of Home Affairs, which was then the Portfolio of Internal and External Affairs. It's been a matter that I think has not been an easy one to try to fix. You want to send a strong message that we are tough on crime, but yet we want to ensure that we are being fair to our persons who have lived a crime-free life for many years after having a conviction. That has been something that I know has been difficult for the committee. The Ministry of Home Affairs has done a lot of research on this. They have talked to other jurisdictions who have similar provisions in their law. So to ensure that what we were bringing to the House here, this Honorable House, was established best practice and something that we believe would work. Madam Speaker, the elected government has told me from early on this was a very important matter that they wanted to bring to the table. And we have done our best to deliver. It's taken much longer than expected, but we are here today, so we should celebrate that. But why is this needed, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, in the 1980s, when this law was passed, hardly anyone got a sentence of 30 months or more. If you got sentenced to 30 months imprisonment in the 1980s, that was considered a really long time, a very, very serious offense. Things have changed, and now those sentences seem to be given out much more frequently. But persons who were convicted in the 1980s and before, those convictions have stayed on their records. I saw just last week, I was dealing with a matter for the political advisor to the Premier. We're trying to get an elderly gentleman into the United States. And he had a conviction in, I believe it was in the mid-70s, that is still on his record today and is preventing him from traveling into the United States. We have a number of our, I know a number of young men who committed foolish crimes in their early 20s have been model citizens. I'm thinking of one particular gentleman who has been an outstanding citizen ever since his conviction. Is in the church, is running a successful business, has a family, is a model citizen, someone who I look up to and respect, and he can't travel with his family simply because of that conviction, that mistake that he made when he was in his early 20s. He's now in his late 40s, and he can't travel because the conviction under the Rehabilitation of Offenders law that we currently operate under, that conviction can never become spent. This law seeks to address that, and I'm very pleased that we were able to bring this law because the response, I think any government, their obligation is to provide hope and opportunities for its citizens. We have to show our young people, we recognize that if you do make a mistake, we're going to be tough on you. But if you really rehabilitate yourself, if you take advantage of the programs that we offer in the prison, if you take advantage of the programs we offer when you come out of prison, if you live a crime-free life, there will become a reasonable time frame where that conviction will be removed from your record and you can go about getting a better job, traveling, being a productive member of our society. Because, Madam Speaker, the opposite is that people will say, well, why am I behaving myself? Why am I living this crime-free life if I have this conviction hanging over my head? I can't get a good job. I can't travel. Maybe I should return to that life of crime. So we have to give our people that opportunity for hope that if you do behave yourself, you will be able to have that conviction removed from your record. But we have to do it in a very responsible way so that we are being tough on crime, but again, we're having that balance of giving our persons hope and opportunity. Now, Madam Speaker, there's been a lot of debate about various provisions in the law, Section 8, 9, and 10, and mainly because it applies to non-nationals, non-Caymanians. But, Madam Speaker, what's in those provisions? It is basically what happens in Cayman today. So this is nothing new. So for an example, if a foreign national comes into Cayman today, applies for a work permit, and List said, have you ever been convicted of offense? And he says, yes. In 1990, I was convicted for theft. I was fined $500 or 10 days. The immigration authorities are going to look to the Rehabilitation of Offenders law. It's going to say that that conviction is spent and we are not going to hold it against that person. On many occasions, that happened when I was over at immigration. Sometimes the convictions were still active. In those cases, the person was removed. However, if the convictions were alive, they were still active. If they were active, they were removed. If they were spent, they got to stay. Yes. So what's in these sections, ma'am, is nothing new. And Madam Speaker, what I think is very important is that we want other countries to now respect our nationals whose convictions are going to be taken off their record or to be expunged. But can you imagine us trying to now defend this decision when someone's applying for a visa in a country and they call us up and said, but this person had a conviction the last time they applied. But this time there's not, and we said, yes, that person's record was expunged. And they said, oh, okay, so you have a law. Well, what happens if one of our citizens comes to your country? Will that seem law apply to them? And we would say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't really seem fair. So what we're doing here, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that we have a very fair process that other countries will respect. We have to do something to ensure that what we are doing is not seen to be soft on crime, and certainly this is not, but it's also open and transparent and applies across the board. So that's what this law is about. Additionally, the member from East End has been saying that somehow we're becoming soft on prohibited immigrants or persons who had previously been deported. And it's an effort to circumvent the provisions of the prohibited immigrants bill that has been down to the House before. Madam Speaker, we're comparing chalk and cheese. There's two things that are completely different. Let me explain. Madam Speaker, in the immigration law, today, a person who has been deported, removed, declared a prohibited immigrant, today, so Cabinet meets today and declares that person a prohibited immigrant and to be deported because of a very, very serious crime. The immigration law today says that that person can leave the Cayman Islands after spending a day off island, can apply to come back to Cayman, and if Cabinet is so minded, they can allow that person to come back. That's what the law of the land is today. The provisions of that bill that was here at the House basically set tariffs that said if you have been deported from the island, depending on the seriousness of your offense and the connections or lack thereof of connections to the islands, you cannot even apply to come back to Cayman for 15 or 20 years. Now, certainly I believe that that provisions of that bill is a lot stronger and a stronger deterrent than what we have today. So it's two different things completely. But how does the provisions of that bill fit into what we're doing today? And again, Madam Speaker, it doesn't. What this law says is that if a prohibited immigrant who has been deported from the islands, they can write back to Cayman and says, you deported me in 1980. We are now in 2016. I have lived a crime-free life all this time. Here's my police record. Here's my character references, all these things. Can the expungement board expunge my conviction? The expungement board would carry out its own investigation, talk to the police overseas, do some intelligence checks, and they can agree to expunge that person's record that they had while they were in Cayman. Then, Madam Speaker, the person could then apply to Cabinet for permission to return. Cabinet doesn't have to grant it, it can be refused. So, in my opinion, Madam Speaker, I think it's very clear that this law is allowing for persons who have been previously deported and removed to still have their convictions expunged, but it does not, let me repeat that, it does not give them any automatic right to return to the Cayman Islands. That procedure is still governed by the Cabinet. So, Madam Speaker, it says so right here. It says, where a person's in 9.2, where a person's criminal record has been expunged in circumstances described in subsection 1, that person may re-enter the islands or live or visit after satisfying the requirements of such law as may from time to time be enforced in relation to prohibited immigrants. And there's only one law, Madam Speaker, that has anything to do with prohibited immigrants, and that is the immigration law, which says very clearly a prohibited immigrant shall not be allowed to enter or remain in the Cayman Islands without the express permission of Cabinet. So it is very clear here that the purposes of these sections is not to pardon non-nationals who are here, to entice non-nationals to come into Cayman, but it allows a mechanism where persons who have previously been deported or declared for immigrants to also have their records expunged. And Madam Speaker, there's good reason for that. There are many people who have left this island for years, who have children, who have parents, who have aunts, uncles, mothers, and fathers who are living here. And they may have lived a crime-free life of 40 years and would now like to come back to visit, to live, to work. This law allows them to do that. It may be that the expungement board says no and Cabinet says no, but they have that opportunity to be able to apply. So, Madam Speaker, I think this law strikes the balance that the government tasked the ministry with doing, in that it is strong on crime. It sends a very strong message. You're not going to get a conviction and it'll be off your record in a few days or a few weeks or a few months. You have to conduct yourself to a very high standard if you want to be your record to be expunged, but it also provides that hope for persons who says, I've been convicted, I have lived a crime-free life for 15 years, now that record will be off and I can become a better citizen, I can travel with my family, I can get a better job, I can be a productive member of our community. Madam Speaker, there's nothing here, and I have read this law. I was part of the original committee that did this. Chief Officer Bush, Chief Officer Howard, Deputy Chief Officer Ms. Dinsbill Powell, and others have worked exceptionally hard on this to make sure that we got it right. And I believe that we have a good law here, a good bill that we can support. Do we need to perhaps tinker with it? Yes, based on some of the provisions that we have here, the rehabilitation periods. But overall, Madam Speaker, this bill is going to do a lot of good for our people. The government is meeting its obligations of providing hope and opportunities for its people. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other one wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. I recognize Honorable Minister for Education.
Madam Speaker, I was wondering if we were going to adjourn for the evening, but
Honorable Premier. Do you wish to make the motion for the adjournment? Your Minister of Education is seeking guidance.
You're not gonna have no quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Honorable Minister of Education, indication is that the debate will continue on unless there's a motion to the contrary.
We have a meeting to vote at 7 o'clock. We gonna have to leave, so you don't have no quorum. Come back Wednesday.
Honorable Minister of Education.
thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the aims of this law and this proposed bill. In particular, Madam Speaker, in the presentation of this bill, the Premier outlined some of the important aims that this bill presents. It creates enhanced employment prospects. It works towards reducing the rate of recidivism. It increases the prospects for travel. And Madam Speaker, as it relates to creating enhanced employment prospects, the key concern of ex-offenders is often what are their prospects for employment, if any, once they leave prison. And so, Madam Speaker, by putting forward this bill, we look to address that particular concern by giving more of an opportunity for getting employment because of the barrier that many people have, being the criminal conviction. Madam Speaker, the NWDA currently runs and supports some targeted programs which have been developed during the past 3 years to work specifically with persons currently incarcerated and those slated to be released imminently. And I will discuss some of those programs in just a bit. But Madam Speaker, as it relates to reducing the rate of recidivism, it is well known that this is a concern for us here in the Cayman Islands. Although I don't have the statistic to hand, Madam Speaker, I do understand that the recidivism rate is high and it is of concern for the community. So certainly, Madam Speaker, having this bill which will increase the prospects for employment, which is often tied with the rate of reoffending, or there is a negative correlation, I guess you would say. And so that creates the opportunity to lessen this particular concern for our community. And Madam Speaker, as was discussed as it relates to travel, as we heard from the Deputy Governor and others of specific examples, this is an issue, Madam Speaker, that affects real families, it affects real people, and it affects real lives. So much so, Madam Speaker, that I have, and I know, a family member of mine who is suffering from a form of cancer, needs to travel overseas to get the treatment, but is unable to do so because of travel restrictions due to an unspent criminal record many, many years ago. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that the ability to expunge certain records will help people to increase their opportunities for not just travel for leisure, but travel for medical reasons, travel for furthering their education, travel for a number of reasons, Madam Speaker. And so certainly this is something that, as I said, will have a positive impact on many families and many lives in the community. Madam Speaker, I'd like to discuss some of the programs, as I referred to previously, as it relates to working with offenders, persons who are currently in the prisons or who are soon to be released. Because, Madam Speaker, even while we as a government made this a priority, as was expressed by the Deputy Governor when we took office, to try to get this legislation here as quickly as possible, we also made sure that particular provisions were made in the interim, working primarily through the National Workforce Development Agency, working along with the Community Rehabilitation Department under the Ministry of Home Affairs and the prisons and otherwise. But I think it's important, Madam Speaker, that the country gets an understanding and an appreciation of this government's commitment, and certainly the Ministry of Employment's commitment to trying to address the issues as it relates to employment, specifically for this particular category of unemployed persons, those most notably who are on the cusp of being released or have been released from prison. Madam Speaker, there is a prison outreach program which is facilitated by the NWDA with Fairbanks, with Her Majesty's Prison, Fairbanks, as well as northward locations. This particular program deals with offering employability skills, and it's a course based on a combined use of City and Guilds curriculum, an introduction to the NWDA services, and a use of Career Ready 101, which has been developed by the NWDA to be conducted over 15 weeks, that's 15 weeks, to those who have been referred to the program by Her Majesty's Prison for training as a part of their sentence plan. Madam Speaker, the NWDA has also been tasked with preparing prisoners with the requisite skills and opportunities to seek, obtain, and retain employment prior to post-prison release. So the NWDA, Madam Speaker, not only provides offenders with easy access to transition their education and training opportunities from prison, but also the counseling and career guidance that is needed in order to support their employment efforts. Madam Speaker, this ensures that a sense of continued connection with the NWDA upon release as they seek to enter the labor market. Madam Speaker, it's about giving people a second chance and helping them to find that second chance in terms of continuing training and career guidance. It is important to note, Madam Speaker, that there was an initial interruption in the program when it was first launched due to lack of resources at the prisons. However, I've been made to understand that the program has recently been revamped in partnership with Her Majesty's Prison to better service the needs of those who are scheduled for release. Madam Speaker, there's also a post-release assistance offered through the Employment Services arm of the NWDA. And again, the NWDA also supports those persons with criminal records who have registered with the agency. This includes assisting them with their employment search and liaising with their probation officers and other supporting agencies. For these clients, Madam Speaker, the NWDA also take into consideration any probation terms, compensation order in place, and any outstanding charges that may impact their ability to enter employment. Madam Speaker, part of the NWDA's registration process includes administering an assessment to identify any other social, economic, or psychological barriers that they may face in addition to their conviction. Again, provisions are also made for training and skills development of the persons to demonstrate that they are work ready. And Madam Speaker, for many persons, especially those who have served an extended period of time behind bars, this is an especially challenging task, showing and demonstrating that they are work ready upon prison release can be a challenge. And so through the support offered by the NWDA, this is something that is being specifically addressed amongst the ex-offender population registered with the agency. And so, Madam Speaker, the NWDA also provides guidance to these job seekers on methods to inform prospective employers about their convictions and how to respond to questions regarding their criminal convictions during the interview process. And you know, Madam Speaker, as the expression goes, there's only one chance, or you only get one chance to make the first impression. Now, this is a challenge for many people in and of itself, but it is also an even more difficult challenge for persons with a criminal conviction as it relates to making a positive first impression. So working with them to help them to learn how to deal with the tough questions, how to have the tough discussions when they are in the interview process in a way that does not prejudice them any more so than the conviction itself would have. These are some of the services that the NWDA offer in working with the prison community. Madam Speaker, there is also the Release on Temporary License Board, which includes a member of the NWDA representative who provides recommendation for final consideration on placement opportunities. Inmates currently due for release on the Release to Temporary License program are matched with employment opportunities, and the NWDA supports these inmates externally through care, through employment support and career counseling, and training and development opportunities as a part of the program, Madam Speaker. And it is important and specific to note that during the period of July 2015 to June 2016, 11 persons have been actively assisted as they transition into the community through this particular program. So that is just for that 1 year period of time. I'm sure, Madam Speaker, there have been others who have been assisted, but that is the stats that I have to date to be able to speak to that particular instance. But it's always good to put an actual number or to indicate that these programs are not just there in theory, but they are helping real people and making an impact on real lives. Madam Speaker, the Drug Rehabilitation Court is a voluntary program for offenders charged with drug and drug-related offenses. And again, the NWDA representatives attend the drug court twice a month and provide advice and guidance to the Drug Rehabilitation Court team. NWDA is also tasked with assisting those who have achieved the appropriate level within the program with their employment search to provide additional career guidance and to support to these individuals. And again, Madam Speaker, 32 people have been assisted or referred to the NWDA during the period of July 2014 and June 2016 as it relates to this particular program. Madam Speaker, the issue of technical and vocational education and training is a bit of a buzzword in Cayman in many regards. But, Madam Speaker, I am proud to say that there is a specific and targeted approach to addressing the needs of the prison population as it relates to technical vocational education and training within the broader ambit of the government's push to address TVET education, training, and employment opportunities. So, Madam Speaker, the prison partnership, in partnership with Her Majesty's Cayman Islands Prison Services, the NWDA is currently working to examine the current TVET offerings and to identify ways to rebrand the TVET program offered at the prison, which includes attracting key stakeholders and sponsors, private sector partners, non-governmental partners, and even in some cases, governmental partners who represent specific TVET trades. This also includes, Madam Speaker, ensuring that all training programs identified can lead to some form of recognizable certification. Again, Madam Speaker, as it relates to training, in today's day and age, it's not sufficient to just offer training for training's sake, but you want to have these particular programs lead to some sort of certification that will then increase the opportunities for actual employment once the training has been completed. So again, the partnership aspect of this particular program with the private sector and with other organizations will help to ensure a smoother transition for those persons from imprisonment to employability upon release. So again, Madam Speaker, as it stands, currently, surveys are being conducted of the inmates to determine the key skills areas of interest, but to also determine where the key labor market needs are, because it's a key to match the labor supply with the labor demand. And so we want to make sure that in developing this TVET specific program for the prisons and further developing this program, that it actually addresses the needs within the labor market, but it harnesses to the best extent possible the skills, the interests, and the desires of those who are incarcerated to, again, increase their opportunities for success in not only undergoing and completing the program, but then finding ultimate employment as an ultimate goal. And so, Madam Speaker, the first phase of this particular program is expected to begin with Northward and the prisoners at Northward, and then later to be expanded to Her Majesty's Prison at Fairbanks. And the timeline for the official launch is currently set for November of this year, where businesses will be invited at that time to learn more and to become partners in the program. And as I said, Madam Speaker, this fits within the broader TVET strategy. As you know, the government has convened a national training council, and a part of that remit is to look at technical and vocational education and training at all levels of the community, from schools straight on up. And of course, our prison population is a key population that will benefit from this type of program. So, Madam Speaker, in such a small community as Cayman, having a criminal conviction and the nature of the crime or repeat offenses can mean that persons with a record are either marginalized or effectively reducing employment opportunities. Madam Speaker, this marginalization is sometimes paired with the lack of skills needed to find employment. So further compounding the issues of these persons, and very few companies oftentimes are willing to provide employment opportunities to those with criminal convictions. So having the opportunity to have, where appropriate, your convictions expunged after you've done the time, served your time, and have proven to be a member of the community worth giving that second chance to, then these barriers faced by ex-offenders can be addressed in some degree with respect to what is being proposed here today in this particular bill, but also it is being addressed, as I said, through the provision and delivery of training and educational opportunities, as well as collaboration with the business community, the employers, and engagement with the wider community as well. But, Madam Speaker, there needs to be, obviously, the will and the determination of the ex-offenders themselves to put their criminal past behind them and to move forward to be positive, productive citizens in the community. But once they've showed that willingness, Madam Speaker, and now with these provisions to be able to expunge those convictions at the appropriate time, there also needs to be the increased willingness to provide employment opportunities for those persons with criminal records and those persons to soon have the expunged records. Madam Speaker, it also requires that offenders must commit themselves to choose a life free of crime, as I said. And that is the ultimate and only way, I believe, that they will be successful in not just gaining employment, but also progressing and maintaining that employment and career opportunities post-prison. But, Madam Speaker, before I wind up my contribution, I think it's important, as I said, to demonstrate that the government, and certainly as Minister with responsibility for employment, we are concerned about trying to address the issues of employment and unemployment in all of the key areas and categories of unemployment. And as I said, the actual prison population is one that we have been concerned with, and we have been working, as I have outlined here today, specifically to target them and to give them the greatest opportunity for success, the greatest hope for success, as the Deputy Governor said, as it relates to putting programs that are targeted to their success, as well as changing the legislative framework, which in many instances has continued to be a barrier for many people in now success. But Madam Speaker, I believe at this point it is critical, because you know we are in that period where people will be talking about the issues affecting this country, and employment obviously is one of those issues that people will continue to talk about. But Madam Speaker, more so for the benefit of the listening public, I believe it is important that I ask the question, what did the former administration do with respect to addressing these concerns, specifically as we're talking about the concerns today of our prison population? And more specifically, Madam Speaker, what did the former Minister of Education and Labour, my predecessor, do to address any of these employment concerns of those prisoners and those soon to be released back into society? In fact, Madam Speaker, if you look at what was done, I would venture to say that the former Minister of Education did very little, if anything, to address the concerns of unemployment, not just amongst the unemployed, Madam Speaker, amongst the soon-to-be prison population or the ex-offender, but very little to address the concerns of unemployed persons in general. We know that unemployment was at its highest under the former Minister of Labour, and I know that the economy was in a very different state. But, Madam Speaker, in terms of actual programs, in terms of actual initiatives, in terms of actual effort taken to address these concerns, Madam Speaker, it is fair to say very little, if anything, had been done during the former minister's tenure. Madam Speaker, these issues have been around for many, many years. We've had prisoners for many, many years, and they all had the same concerns as it relates to reintegrating into society. But here again, Madam Speaker, as was said by those who spoke previously, this bill has been a long time coming. And here again, the development and tabling of this bill, which specifically seeks to create enhanced employment opportunities and prospects for ex-offenders and to reduce the rate of recidivism amongst the prison population, this is another clear example that we are a government that get things done. Madam Speaker, I also find it ironic when I hear the former Minister of Education and Labour trying to criticize the government for getting things done by saying that we are in a quote-unquote tick box mode leading up to elections. Madam Speaker, that is just foolishness. That is nothing but an attempt to hide and deflect from his own failings as a former Minister of Labour. When you had the opportunity and you did nothing, and the best you can do now is to try to minimize the significance and the importance of a minister and a government that gets things done by calling it a tick box exercise, well, Madam Speaker, that is quite sad. Madam Speaker, it is the predecessor, my immediate predecessor that I'm talking about, Madam Speaker, for the benefit of doubt for anybody in the chamber and listening. Madam Speaker, because it means that you don't have the decency to tell the people the truth. That you have no intention of ticking the box, as you call it. Because quite frankly, as can be seen from the dismal track record of the former Minister of Employment, nothing was done. And obviously, the preferred course of action was to do nothing. So, Madam Speaker,
Honorable Minister, we are still talking about the criminal records.
absolutely, Madam
Convention
Speaker,
Bill.
we are talking about the Criminal Records Bill, and the fact that we heard here today that that bill was put forward in 2010, or not really the bill, but there was a motion in the House during the previous administration, and nothing was done to move that bill forward. Madam Speaker, that gives a clear indication that they didn't care about dealing with the issues at hand. They didn't care to put the time and the effort and the energy, and in particular, the predecessor Minister of Employment, who has the same obligations that I currently have, did not do what was necessary to see that this bill and these programs that I've just outlined either were developed, came to fruition, launched, or otherwise. So, Madam Speaker, when we hear people trying to minimize the efforts of this government as being a tick box exercise, we need to see it for what it is. If you do not care enough to carry through on your campaign promises, then people shouldn't care enough to listen to your campaign promises. Madam Speaker, as part of the campaign for this office, I promised the people that I would work to undertake required reforms in the penal system aimed at offender rehabilitation, community reentry training, and support to reduce high levels of recidivism, and to partner with the private sector to establish an incentivized community work program to assist offenders with the reintegration in the community. These are things, Madam Speaker, that can be found in the National Priorities Plan of the independent members of the government. And so, Madam Speaker, as Minister of Employment, I'm happy to be a part of a government that has done just that. We have worked to undertake the required reforms to the penal system presented here today in the form of this bill. We have worked to put in place better job opportunities, better prospects for successful reintegration in society by releasing the shackles where appropriate that an unspent criminal record has on hindering success in finding jobs and becoming productive citizens in the community. And certainly, Madam Speaker, we have done so working hand in hand, part and parcel with the Deputy Governor and his staff to ensure that we actually have achieved getting this bill to this House. So when I say the government, I certainly in this instance include the Deputy Governor, all the civil servants, the Attorney General's Chambers staff in pulling together the legislation, and all persons who work tirelessly to make this bill a fruition. I'm sure, Madam Speaker, as the Premier has indicated, there may be committee stage amendments, as every bill may go through during the process. But in terms of what this bill represents, it represents a second chance. And Madam Speaker, I believe in second chances. And I believe that this bill will provide that badly needed second chance for many people with criminal records. And I believe, as Minister of Employment, it's important to do what you say and say what you mean. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does another member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? Recognize Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to wind up the debate on this important bill. I wish to thank all members who have spoken for their support, to indicate that we have taken on board the observations of the members who have issues, particularly the members from East End and North Side, with respect to the bill. Madam Speaker, I think it would probably serve the House and the broader community better if I were to adjourn or defer. Adjourn is probably the best. My final comments on the representations that have been made until Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock when we resume, in order that I can address some of those concerns that I've just mentioned in more detail. And so, Madam Speaker, with your permission, I would wish to adjourn the House until Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock.
The question is that this Honorable House now stand adjourned until Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. I believe the ayes have it. The House now stands adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday morning.